You know that feeling when you're studying for a big tech certification? You're drowning in a sea of textbooks and white papers, thinking you have to memorize every single detail. It feels like climbing a mountain.
It's the classic approach, and for the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam in 2026, it's completely wrong. What if I told you the secret isn't about climbing the mountain, but finding a 7-day shortcut that takes you right to the top? It's less about studying hard and more about studying smart.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So, let's start with the reality check for 2026. I hear the AWS CLF C02 exam has moved entirely away from theory, focusing 100% on business scenarios where you have to match specific AWS services to real-world problems. And the scoring is brutal on multiple choice questions. If you don't get every single correct option right, you get 0 credit.
That's the all or nothing trap. But here's the counterintuitive part. You don't actually need to study the whole AWS ecosystem. If you focus on just 30 high-frequency points, you've already covered 80% of the passing score. It's about being a sniper, not a carpet bomber. In 2026, the exam isn't testing if you're a walking encyclopedia. It's testing if you're a competent digital architect who can match the right tool to the right problem in under 60 seconds.
A digital architect. I like that. So it's less about understanding how the engine works and more about knowing which button to press when the warning light comes on.
Exactly. Think of it like a scenario mapping game. If the question mentions long-term data archiving for the lowest cost, your brain should immediately flash S3 Glacier without even thinking about the rest of the paragraph. If you're spending weeks reading white papers, you're doing it wrong.
So, if we stop the endless reading and start the strategic targeting, how do we actually structure those final days before the exam? Let's look at the 7-day sprint.
Right. To pass that 700 point threshold, you have to dominate 2 specific areas: security, compliance, and architecture. These 2 alone make up a massive 64% of your grade. This covers everything from the shared responsibility model to the differences between services like S3, EC2, and Lambda.
That makes sense. You focus your firepower where it counts the most.
Precisely. And the biggest point loser here is usually the networking security. People constantly mix up security groups and NACLs. Just remember this: security groups are stateful and act like a personal bodyguard for your specific EC2 instance. NACLs are stateless and function like the big security gate for the entire neighborhood, or the subnet. Mixing those up is probably the fastest way to tank your score in 2026.
I see. It's those subtle identity differences that make or break the score. But even if you know the tech, the clock is your biggest enemy, so how do we handle the actual 90 minutes in the exam room?
The strategy for the actual 90-minute exam is to move fast, aim to finish all questions within the first hour, and when you're stuck, use the exclusion method. You can almost always eliminate 2 options that are obviously wrong, then you just have to choose between the remaining 2.
So don't get bogged down by the long-winded stories AWS likes to tell in the questions.
Exactly. You just hunt for the requirement, problem, and goal.
Got it. So if you see DDoS, you should be looking for Shield. If you see audit logs, you immediately search for CloudTrail.
Yes, don't overthink it. If you spend more than a minute on a question without an answer, mark it and move on. Come back to it in that last 30-minute block you've saved for yourself.
Speed, focus, and knowing exactly what AWS is looking for. It really does sound like a formula more than a test. So, if you had to boil this all down, what are the absolute critical takeaways?
Well, it comes down to 4 things. First, remember the 64% rule. Prioritize the security and architecture modules above all else. They are your foundation for a passing score. Second, it's all about scenario mapping, not memorization. Stop learning specs and start mapping business problems, like cost analysis, to their tools, like Cost Explorer. Third, watch out for the all or nothing trap on multiple choice questions. There's no partial credit. And finally, think of your final week as a 7-day sprint. Spend the first few days mastering the key modules, and the last few days doing what I'd call high-intensity interval training with past exam questions to build that crucial muscle memory.